Welcome to this published author's interview. My name is Kenneth Muyingo, and with me I have a special guest that I will be interviewing. First, I just want to mention, if you watch this interview and you would like to write a book yourself and become an author, there's a link with the interview for you to click on the link and join the group, become an author, and write your first book to connect with like-minded people who are doing the same. And with that said, I would like to get into the interview by asking my guests to say hello to our viewers and listeners and to introduce herself.
Hi, thank you, Kenneth, for hosting me. I am Alexis Pierce. I'm pretty excited. This is the first time I've written a book and published it, and I'm really thrilled to be here and talk about it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alexis, for making time for the interview at such short notice. And I'm also excited and looking forward to this conversation. Tell us about yourself. If somebody's watching this interview and they would like to know more about Alexis Pierce, what would you tell them?
So many of us think that we have to have one identity as we go through life. And I'm one of those people who doesn't. So I'm now in the self-help, self-development world. I also teach meditation and forms of embodiment practices. But before I started doing this work that led to this book, I used to work in the US government as a high-level strategist. And I worked on really complex crises. So anytime there was something that we couldn't easily respond to, I helped create a system of figuring out how, as a whole country, the US could respond to really, really complex issues like a country in the middle of war or a big emergency or things like that. So I've got this connecting the dots sort of mind. And that's the thread that carries through from my previous career as a strategist to now in the self-development world and coaching people and helping people. It's still all about connecting dots and finding solutions. So you can change your identity and still be the same wonderful person who has really brilliant skills.
What? Oh my goodness. Quite a profile. So like a high-level strategist working with the US government, and now you're in the self-help area with helping people with meditation and mindfulness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I knew from when I was a young age that the things that mattered to me most were peace. Like I just couldn't understand war. I couldn't understand it at all. Couldn't understand gun violence. I just couldn't get it as a kid. And I just knew that in my world, in my reality, violence didn't exist. And so I went into this sort of international peace realm and worked on, assisting countries who were having difficulties or working with refugees and investigating like what are the underlying causes here? How do we really actually interrupt violence? And the more I worked and the more I got into it, the more I looked in the mirror and said, but you're not at peace. How can you go and talk to other people about peace out here when I'm not at peace in here? Wow. And it just became such a tension that it's actually not a Dalai Lama quote, but I had it in my head that it was a quote from the Dalai Lama that you have to first work within before you can have it outside of yourself. And so I just remember in the government coming home and going, I've got to work on myself. And that's how I got into meditation. And I've always been into self-help, but I started to take it more and more seriously as almost like a part-time job for myself to try to calm down and try to just, can I be an emissary of peace in the world?
Wow. Quite a journey. And I think I must commend you. It takes a whole lot of courage because the way society has been set up, we are sort of like programmed to look on the outside of ourselves. When something is not working here, we have to find something on the outside of us to point a finger to. And it takes a whole lot of courage to say, let's go with it. Okay, what's going on?
Yeah, well, and actually that's really the point of the book that I've written. It's a journal, and it was the process that I actually took myself through 10 and 11 years ago when I just wanted to quit my job. I was like, the easy answer is just quit, just run away, just make this stop. but I couldn't because I had bills and I had a house and
Yeah.
I couldn't get out of the house. And, there were all of these things that meant I couldn't just cut and run. I couldn't
Yeah.
just run away. So I had to find a different solution. And
Amazing.
it forced me to go inwards. And this is what I wrote was the process that I used to really find a space within myself that could be happier, that could actually feel like I matter on a day-to-day basis instead of just being a robot in a big work machine, which we've all had, I'm sure, that feeling of like, am I supposed to just work and die? Because this sucks.
Wow. This is quite a journey, Alexis. And I like how it comes in really nicely and it lands on the book. And this is what I want us to talk about in this interview. You have published a book. It's called Everyday Joy. There it is.
There it is. Everyday Joy.
Tell us about this book. Tell us about Everyday Joy. What's the vision that you have for this book, and how did it come about?
Thank you. That's a great question. Thank you. So this, as I said, it's not a book in the traditional sense. It has a couple chapters of writing, and then it's a guided journal. And a guided journal means that in the book, you'll find specific questions to answer to help you achieve a certain outcome. And for me, that outcome was how can I feel like I have a say in my life? Because at the time that I wrote this for myself, so I originally made this process for myself about 10 or 11 years ago. And I just wrote it in like a day planner, like just, in the side notes. And I started keeping this homemade version of the journal myself. And it was because I kept going to work Monday through Friday and then thinking that my life was only on Saturday and Sunday. And so I was resentful of my job, but I had to have my job to pay my bills, but I wanted to leave, but I had to have it. And so I was in this place of just like faking it and waiting for the weekend, but then being angry that the weekend went so fast and I didn't have enough money and I didn't have enough time and I didn't have enough, anything.
Wow.
And that feeling, I think, is so common to so many of us, where we feel like we're stuck in circumstances that we just can't get out of. And we feel like, when am I actually going to get to be me? When am I actually going to get to live my life? Do I have to wait till I'm 70? Do I have to wait till I win the lottery? We have that feeling. And I just remember one day going, doesn't Tuesday matter as much as Saturday? Like, both days are my life.
Yeah.
Aren't I I'm alive on Tuesday just as much as I'm alive on Saturday? And so I realized I don't want to spend my Tuesday waiting for Saturday. I want to spend my Tuesday living my life. And so I started this process of inviting myself to find joy in every single day. And that's where the title comes, Everyday Joy. And I did it for about a year, and it had an amazing outcome on my life in ways I didn't expect. Like, I got a lot happier, but I also, shocking, I wasn't expecting this. It built my self-esteem. It built my confidence. I was better able to express boundaries with people without being mean. Just like, no, this is what matters to me, because I was so focused on my joy. I knew what my priorities were. It was a really cool process, and I'm excited to now be sharing it. It took 10 years to get to this point to share it, but I'm excited.
Wow. This is listening to you. It resonates very, very deeply with me, because this is something that I can relate to personally as far as the work arrangement is concerned. And you're just wondering, is this it? Am I just here to just get a job and pay some bills and get a house and maybe a dog, and that's it? And wow, this is, and I'm thinking, so you are working with the US government as a high-level strategist, and this idea comes to mind. I'm thinking, maybe you can even relate to some people in your working arrangement or the job that you are working in that maybe could have had some questions. but maybe they thought about doing similar things, but they didn't. What would you say inspired you to write this book and to go on this journey in the first place?
You know, I was having the really funny part about dreams is that sometimes we achieve them and they still don't make us happy because it's not about the external achievement anyway. It's always about who we're becoming in the process. And so I had this perfect job that I always dreamed of, and it was everything I always wanted. And I still was like, well, wait, what if this is the epitome, like if this is the pinnacle of my life? Really? I thought it would take me longer to get here. Like, what is my purpose if this is it?
Yeah.
How, and that feeling of, well, why am I here? And what is this about? And then on top of that, I had a colleague and a friend assault me. So it was like, okay, I already knew this wasn't fulfilling. And now life is telling me, hey, this really isn't a good situation for you. And but I felt really stuck because I'd planned to do it for my whole life. I was told and taught that you get a great job and you stick with it your whole life, especially because my job was great. I loved it.
Yeah.
But deep down, I still wasn't happy. And then with the personal challenges and feeling so stuck because I was so lucky and fortunate to be able to buy a home, but my home was like falling apart. Like the ceiling fell out. There was a hole in the floor. Like it was terrible. So I couldn't just sell it. I had to fix it. So I had to stay in the job to get the money to fix it. But I never had enough money to fix it. You know, that feeling of just, I'm stuck, I'm stuck, I'm stuck, I'm stuck. I'm unhappy, I'm unhappy, I'm unhappy. Why is life doing this to me?
Yeah.
That feeling. And it was so painful. It was so painful.
Wow.
And I just had to find something to help myself get out of it. And this process was really what I turned to. And of course, at the time, I had no idea what I was doing. I just realized I've got to find something every day to know that I cared for myself, whether it was go for a walk or eat a strawberry. I've got to find some way to bring the recognition that I'm alive to my everyday.
Wow. You mentioned something that achieving the dream and not being happy because you're like, I mean, is this it? And that I think many viewers and listeners, when they listen to this, they will something that they'll resonate with. And maybe I have a bonus question here. If somebody is listening to this or watching this and they find themselves in this place, that the thing they thought is what they wanted is now in their hands and they're not happy, what would you tell them, or where would they start?
I actually talk about this in the book, which is perfect that it came up. But we've been trained, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong here. Nobody did anything wrong. But we've been trained to only find pride or happiness in really big achievements, right? And that's a great way to instill values in children, like stay in school, eat good vegetables, right? Like we have these moments, or if you read this book, then I'll give you this. So we have this setup that's really great to instill values, to help people achieve things. But then when you're an adult, there's no reward that comes outside necessarily that's going to make you happy. The reward has to be coming from the inside. But when we haven't practiced the skill of actually feeling content and feeling fulfilled and tuning into ourselves, what happens is we just get the thing and then we feel empty. So we get another thing and feel empty, and get another thing and feel empty. And then what happens is we feel broken. Well, what's wrong with me? Why aren't I satisfied? I'm clearly impossible. I'm clearly the only person in the world who's unhappy here. Because I used to think that. I would watch everybody walk by in the hallway at my government job and go, well, they seem totally fine. They seem content. I clearly am messed up, right? That feeling. And then we get isolated and we pull back, and we can add shame to ourselves that we think something's wrong with us. And then we match it with this sort of cliche of a midlife crisis where you leave your family and you do something crazy and you ditch everybody in your life. And so nobody wants to do that because maybe you worked hard and you love your family and you don't want to run away. So we feel really stuck and we just try to bury it down. So the great place to start, if any of that resonates with somebody listening, a great place to start is, I recommend my journal, of course, because it's about recognizing and training yourself to actually feel happy on a day-to-day basis. Because happiness doesn't come in the big things. I mean, it can come in anything. And that's the point. It can come in anything. But if we're not used to giving ourselves the opportunity to be happy, if we're not used to actually feeling the sensation of happiness, because it's a physical feeling.
Indeed.
It's an openness. It's I can relax. It's the nourishment. We have to practice that skill set just because we didn't learn it.
Yeah. Wow. Recognize and train yourself to be happy. That's profound. And in the sense, like, if we are programmed to just find things to be angry about or to be self-critical about, we are going to find it. I'm reminded of a conversation I was having with somebody earlier this week, and he said, if the only way not to find something wrong with something is if there's something right about it. But you cannot find something right with something if you're looking for what's wrong with it. And I think we have to get to that point that we just sort of realize that it's not as bad as we make it out to be. And the thing that you mentioned about looking at yourself and realizing you're like, hey, look, I think I'm really the only unhappy one, or I'm the messed up one. Yeah, that's something I can relate to as well. And it's a journey I have been on personally. So I'm really excited about Everyday Joy. And I'm going to be getting myself a copy of this journey because I think it's going to be helpful in this journey moving forward. And so you mentioned that you've been on the journey for a year, and that's quite a good portion of time. There's something that Steve Jobs said, that we cannot connect the dots looking forward, but we can, from where we are, connect the dots backwards, and we see how the dots have connected to where we are. And I'm thinking, like you said, when you started on this journey, you were not even aware that this is where it was leading. But once you realize that this is where this has led to, after this 1 year of self-reflection, how did you choose? Because now you have these reflections for a year that you have prepared. And then you're like, this is it. But how did you choose the topic, if I could say it like that? I see the title is Everyday Joy. Was there a struggle, or did it sort of just fall in place?
Both. Can both be the answer? So yes. I asked so during that time where I was doing the process, and the journal you'll see it's just one very specific question every day. And then I've added some extra bonus questions to really give you a fuller process. But I asked myself that one question twice a day, every day. And then after that time, I realized something's happening here. Like, I feel better. I feel stronger in myself. I feel more in control of my life. And so I made one. I just sort of hand drew one in a planner for another woman. And I was like, why don't you try this? And that was 10 years ago. And then I let it sit. I ended up quitting my job. I moved across the world. Other things came up. I started a business. I tried to start a business, and then I finally built the business over years, and my mind was very focused over there. And it's only when I started working with clients that I kept bringing it up. Like, oh, you know what I did? I did this. Maybe you should try this.
Yeah.
And I noticed that the people who took it on were also having results. It took me another 5 years until COVID to actually sit down and write it, right? Wow. To actually go, wow, we have the technology to publish these things. I have the ability to share this if I choose to actually sit down. And really the thing that made the biggest difference for me is when the pandemic started
Uh,
and everything seemed to shift, I asked myself, well, if I'm willing to let everything change, if I'm willing to let everything go, what actually matters?
uh,
And what I heard in my heart was, write. You've always wanted to write. You've always thought of yourself as a writer. So write. And that was a really hard truth to face, that
yeah,
I was telling myself that I was something that I wasn't actually doing.
yeah,
But I was very lucky that during that time, I connected with a woman who's like a writing coach, and she believed in me.
uh,
And so having that positive reinforcement got me to actually sit down and do it. And the funny part, and you probably know this, the funny part is you look at the book and you go, when did I write this? I don't remember writing this. I remember editing it, but I don't remember writing this. When did
yeah,
this even happen, right? That's what
yeah,
we do with all achievements. As soon as they're
indeed.
done, we're like, did we do that? I don't know. It feels surreal.
Yeah,
So it's this, we never can say where the beginning of any process is. We only know where we are at the moment.
yeah,
And at the moment, I know that I was in a tough place. I helped myself. I shared that process. Now I get to share it more. And interestingly, it's also coming back around where I'm now going to do the journal again, because I'm like, oh, now I'm ready to take it to the next level with joy and really understand it more deeply. So I don't know if that answers your question.
sort of go like full circle. This is amazing. Wow, wow, it's really exciting. Thank you so much, Alexis. And I
Thank
can
you.
totally resonate and relate with what you're saying as far as this is concerned, because yeah, with the issue of the writing, sometimes you look at the book and you're like, when did I write that? I was having a conversation with some other author, and he said he actually he is lucky to be the first person to read his books. He say, I write the book, but I've realized it just comes to me, and I'm
Yeah.
just privileged to be the person who reads it first. And but it's pretty exciting, and thank you so much for this one. And so you mentioned that you were writing already for a year, just doing the reflection. And then when COVID hit, you sort of like got to this realization that, wait, if I could do anything, it's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you
So
have already
my,
been writing, yeah, at this point.
yes. Oh my, I kid you not. I think all writers' computers look like this. I have 10 different folders for 10 different books. This is number 8 actually in the folder. This is book
Wow.
number 8, Joy Journal in my
Wow.
hard drive. Um, and actually when I quit my government job back in 2010, in 2011, I actually wrote a different book, and I shared it with people and got all sorts of feedback. And then I tried to make the second draft, and then I moved back to the States and I did workshops to test out the concept. And then I shared it with someone who never gave me feedback.
Yeah.
And I cared about their feedback.
Yeah.
And because they never gave it, and because I cared so much about their opinion, I just shut down and I stopped writing
Wow.
that book. And so I started to doubt myself. And I still wrote, because writing is my way of understanding my own thoughts and my own emotions. And so I had a blog that I then wrote and used in my business about, self-development and self-help and inner peace and all of that. So I was still writing, 1,000 words, 2,000 words every day. But the book process, I just sort of collapsed on myself because I had so much self-doubt. And it's taken really until COVID. So it was another 5 years really
Wow.
until COVID, where I finally had a community of people who believed in me. And then
Yeah.
also that realization of am I really ever going to do this? Because now's the time, like strip everything away. Here we
Yeah.
are.
Indeed.
And of course that could happen anytime. But for me, it was a really great time to do it when everything sort of changed. And I realized having that support is where I find motivation. I like to do things when I know that I'm safe. I like people who are like, yay, we
Yeah.
got you. You're doing great. Like that motivates me to keep going.
Yeah.
Whereas without that support, I had too many doubts and I couldn't actually get out of my own way.
Indeed.
So it's
It
been quite
does
a process.
help. Sorry, go for it.
Well, it's just been quite a process. And to anybody who's writing and listening, like, be careful who you share your work with.
Ah,
And the people who you really want their opinion, like, make sure that they're qualified to give it.
indeed.
Because I gave it to somebody who I personally wanted their validation. Not a professional writer, not a professional editor. It was somebody who I wanted personal validation. And when I didn't get that, I was personally hurt.
Oh my.
And that stopped my own process of writing. And what a shame, because who knows what I could have created and shared by now, and who knows who needed to read all the things I didn't create.
Indeed. Wow, this is profound. And in a way, it's something that people are affected with greatly, as far as not getting the validation that they thought they needed to get, as far as their work is concerned, and that crushes them. But I think it does go a long way to have a network of supportive people around you who are rooting for you, and in a way desiring for you to win. The beauty of life is when one person wins, we all win. That's one of my core beliefs. And if there's a way that I can help someone move forward on their journey, I know that that also helps me move forward in my journey as well. Maybe not directly, but indirectly. And that's the beauty of life.
Yeah.
There's a saying in my language that it's only one hand cannot wash itself. It's one hand that washes another. It's easier that way, because we are in a way set up to do and live life together as human beings on earth. Personally, I'm convinced that if it was possible for me to live alone on this planet and do everything I was supposed to do, I would have been put in my own small individual planet, sort of a tiny cocoon for Kenneth. And I just live my life there and then pass on. But since I was put here in this massive space that I can sit in the Netherlands and have a conversation with you in the United States in real time, I think the opportunities are endless. So thank you so much for standing up and believing in the beauty of your own dream, because now the world has everyday joy. And you mentioned that this is project number 8 on your hard drive. I'm not letting you off the hook easily. Do you consider yourself as a naturally talented writer, or is writing a skill that you have developed over time? Yes, maybe you have not published anything until now, but project number 8.
I think the answer is both. I've been really lucky that I've been validated for being a good writer since I was a little kid. And sometimes I go back and read those things and I go, they were just being a nice adult. And they said that. But I've always really enjoyed writing. And I took some writing classes in college, and I took writing classes in high school. I was really lucky to have a high school that offered creative writing. Yeah. And so it's been something I've wanted to hone and get better at. That being said, I just write. Like, the blog was probably the best place for me to start, because I used to be very academic in my writing and very impersonal. Yeah. And when I started my blog, it was the same. It was, let me teach you this. Yeah. And it was this sort of distance of, I will teach you this, but I'm over here and I don't have to participate in this, right? Yeah. I'm just giving you information. Yeah. And as I went through the years blogging, I was testing out and getting more comfortable being personal and actually having a real relationship with people. And it wasn't until COVID that I also had this sort of breakthrough in my own thinking about writing, where I realized it's actually not about me, right? It is, but like you said, we're coming together. And so writing a book, I guess in some way takes a lot of courage. But for me, it didn't take courage in the way that people think. It took courage to sort of get over my own fears of myself in order to serve other people. Because at the end of the day, that's why it's so surreal. This isn't about me anymore. This isn't even mine in some way. It's somebody else's. Yeah. And that courage, it's an inner courage to stop this so we can get out, because it's actually like, yeah, like you said, it's all connected to each other. And so if we have a gift, if you have a gift that's coming through you, if you have an idea that's coming through you, and I also want to read the book about you living in a cocoon and everybody living in cocoons. That sounds like sci-fi fascinating. I want to read that book. But, you know, we get out of our own way to serve life that we're all part of.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Most
so we
definitely.
have skills. We have to hone the skills. You know, each of one of us was given different skill sets.
Yeah.
And the thing about writing that I think is so cool, especially nowadays when you can self-publish, is that what matters is your voice.
Yeah.
People want to connect with who you are. So
Exactly.
even if, like, I've had to learn not to write correctly. I've had to learn to write how I talk. And that's not perfect.
Yeah.
But that's what people want to connect with, is another person. So who cares if your grammar's all over the place? Play with, like, language is there as a tool. Play with it.
Indeed.
Do your thing. Who cares?
Wow. Thank you so much. It's this is really good. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. It's and so it's both naturally talented writer, but then you have also developed over time. And what would you tell me is the one thing that has happened to you personally that has had the greatest impact on you writing? Because if you have 8 projects that are still on the way, and you have already everyday joy, that, you know, you get to a point that you say, this has got to come out. And just like you mentioned earlier about realizing that there's a gift that has been given to you, and as much as the book comes through you, it's not so much for you, because there's people who are actually waiting on the sidelines to get this book and have the best versions of their life on the other side of the end of the book. And so what would you tell me is the one thing that has happened to you personally that has had the greatest impact on your writing?
In the process of actually getting writing from the safety of the computer into the reality of something I can hold in my hands, it was definitely having the support of somebody who is a professional in the industry believe in me. It really was such a difference, because it changed my own way of thinking. Like, I was thinking about writing books as something I had to do to practice my message, or practice who I was, or share my wisdom. And it was too much pressure.
Yeah.
And as soon as I had somebody else who, you know, reads and writes for a living say, yeah, you've got something here that other people don't have. Okay, let's see it. Let's get it. Let's see it. And it was like, oh, okay, let me work through some of this in order to be able to, but I wasn't able to work through some of those fears on my own. I personally needed that support and that encouragement. I really do think some of us grow when people say, you can't do that. And we say, watch me. And some of us, and that's not me, I'm somebody who grows, like, the more you water me, the more I'll be like, yes, please, here I go.
So you blossom when you get encouragement.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really unique that you know yourself that way, because I think some people struggle with this, and I think it also it must have come as a result of being willing to go within and stop looking outside to just realize this is me and this is what works for me. And
well, because we can't share ourselves if we don't feel safe. It's too much pressure. And that safety that we want to feel, we think that it's safety out here. Like, well, if everybody likes me, then I'll be okay. And it's not about that. It's about feeling safe in yourself. So when you find one or two or a group of people who really see you, like, they really get you and get what you're doing and get your work, then it gives you the ability to go, oh, okay. I am okay. I am safe. Yeah, I got this. And then you feel safer in yourself. And then you're able to move forward.
Wow. Thank you. So you mentioned earlier, I'm going to keep coming back to this. This is number 8. So
out
should
of
we
like
expect
10.
something else? Are you currently working on any other project now that Everyday Joy is out of the way?
Yes, I am working on something that I call Your Soul's Calling. My main focus is helping people tap into their purpose, because everybody has a purpose. We just might not be working it and living it in the way that feels really meaningful. So now that I've gotten through my own emotional hurdles with sharing in a book form, I'm like, okay, it's time to share the big stuff. So I'm working in the same group with the same woman who supported me to bring this book about really understanding what purpose means and knowing how to embrace it in meaningful ways.
Wow.
That's what's coming next.
Amazing.
It is terrifying.
But that's the beauty of it. It's and I think it just gives it makes it worth doing. If it's not if that feeling is not there, then I think in a way it's like you don't get the push or the vibe to just keep going at it. And so your life's call, your soul's calling, that's the next project that you're working on. Yeah. And maybe there's a bonus question here. If somebody is watching and they're like, wait, you're talking about purpose and soul's calling. I don't even know my purpose. What would you tell them? Where would you direct them as a good place to start to discover their purpose in life?
Thank you. I actually have a bunch of free videos on it on my YouTube channel. So I'm Alexis Pierce. And so that's a great place to start. I think the first place to start, and you'll see this in many of my videos, is again that idea that purpose is about doing something. Well, purpose is my job. If I just figure out that I'm a nurse or I'm a teacher, but again, that leaves us unfulfilled, because you're a whole being with right. And look at kids. Do kids not have a purpose just because they don't have a job? Do retired people not have a purpose because they don't have a job? What about people who can't work traditionally? So just the idea of attaching purpose to your job, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. You're much bigger than that. And so let yourself off the hook. Oh, okay, my purpose isn't my job. Okay. And then we'll go from there. But start with that. Just play with that. If my purpose isn't my job, if my purpose is who I am, what am I bringing? What am I expressing in the world? Because you're already living it. It's already happening every moment of every day.
Indeed. Wow. I'm reminded of something somebody told me once, that you are not a human doing, you're a human being.
I love that.
And I was like, huh? So this is a season of life that I was always about just going and doing. And I realized that sometimes it's important to just be and let things come to you. And so my purpose is not my job. I'm not what I do. Wow.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, when you're in that space of being, we think oh my God, well, how am I ever going to get stuff done?
Yeah.
But what we really mean by that is when we stop trying to prove ourselves with doing. Yeah. And we tap into who we really are, what are your values? What actually matters to you? Yeah. What do you want to say about yourself? Yeah. Then the person that you are being takes action that's much more impactful and meaningful.
Indeed. Wow.
But first we've got to strip away the trying to prove and earn and validate ourselves through action.
Sort of take away all the masks and just throw them away.
Throw them away. Throw them away. Well, I mean, investigate them first. Be like, why did I choose you? Okay.
Yeah. All right. Wow. Thank you so much, Alexis. This was really inspiring and very uplifting for me. And I know that our viewers are going to love it. But if somebody's watching this interview and they would like to know 2 things. First, where can they connect with you?
I am available online because I run an online business. So you can pretty much find me anywhere. My website is alexispierce.com. And I have another website as well called becomingyouuniversity.com. And between those 2, you can definitely find me. I'm also on Facebook and YouTube.
Very nice.
And none of those things are ever good enough for the now. It's always like a snapshot of the past, and it's embarrassing. So if anybody listening has that, well, I'm not perfect yet, let it go. Moving on. But that's where you can find me.
Very nice. We will put the links with the interview so that people can connect with you. And where can people buy Everyday Joy?
So it is coming out next Tuesday, August 4th, or Tuesday, August 4th. Yes, next week. And it should be available on Amazon and then anywhere where there's distribution. So it'll be on Amazon worldwide and then anywhere, and it should be able to order from a local store as well.
Very nice. I will be pre-ordering this one. It's
Thank you.
wow, this was really nice, Alexis. Thank you so much. Before we finish the interview, is there anything else that you would like to mention that I did not get an opportunity to ask?
I just want to thank you, Kenneth, for not only for having me, but also for having the inspiration and the commitment to holding this space and making these interviews and helping people really bring their own passions and creativity into the world. It's more valuable than I can ever express. So thank you for the work you do.
You're welcome, Alexis. And it's a pleasure for me to be able to do it. And the best part is actually to sort of like become a bonus because I get to connect with awesome, like-minded people every day. And it just doesn't feel like a chore anymore. I'm just loving it. But thank you so much.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.